Today I will be refuting the claim that Americans need to gear towards a vegan lifestyle. The advocate supported this claim with the following secondary claims: that a vegan lifestyle would increase our health, that it would benefit our current environmental issues, and that it would help decrease world hunger. The advocate's first supporting claim that a vegan lifestyle would benefit our health was supported by commonly used statistics by advocates of veganism that have very little scientific literature to prove it. She explained that studies indicate those who follow a vegan lifestyle live an average of 3 to 6 years longer than those who do not. The only scientific study used by these supporters is one study done by Loma Linda University, who studied a group of Seventh-day Adventists. The study actually states that vegetarian men live 9.5 years longer and women live 6.1 years longer. The problem with this evidence is that the correlation between longer life and veganism does not imply causation. It is true that the test group of Seventh-day Adventists live longer, but there are many customs in their lifestyle that could contribute to longevity. They don't drink alcohol, they don't smoke, and they don't consume caffeine, all of which could contribute to why they live longer. The advocate also claims that vegans have a decreased chance of heart disease. However, the International Atherosclerosis Project found that vegetarians had just as much atherosclerosis, which is hardening of the arteries, as meat eaters. They also found that vegetarians have higher levels of homocysteine, a risk marker for heart disease. According to WebMD, homocysteine has been associated with low levels of vitamin B12, which is a main nutrient vegans are missing because it isn't found in plant life. In fact, according to a study done by the University of Wisconsin published in Nature Journal, they found B12 deficiency is very common in vegans. 92% of vegans are deficient in this critical nutrient. The advocate's second supporting claim that going vegan would benefit the environment is based on the United Nations statistic that agriculture, particularly meat and dairy products, account for 19% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. However, according to a new study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, research found that calorie for calorie, fruits and vegetables can be just as polluting as other sectors of the agriculture industry. The study found that higher nutritional quality diets, those of fruits and vegetables, were associated with higher levels of greenhouse gas emissions, whereas diets of poor nutritional quality were associated with lower emissions. An article from the Rodale News states that on a per calorie basis, the study found growing fruits and vegetables emits more greenhouse gases than producing the same number of calories from starches, sweet, salted snacks, dairy products, and even vegetable oils. And emissions associated with growing fruits and vegetables were roughly equal to the greenhouse gases emitted by producing an equivalent number of calories from pork, poultry, and eggs. Nicole Darman, PhD, one of the study's authors and research director of the National Research Institute of Agronomy, states the main reason is that there's a positive relationship between the quantity of food eaten and the carbon impact of diets. So it's not that vegetables are necessarily worse for the planet than beef, it's just that the study participants were eating more fruits and vegetables to get the same number of calories as people eating unhealthy foods and a lot of red meats. The advocate's final supporting claim that a vegan lifestyle could help decrease world hunger failed to address the actual causes of world hunger. The advocate states that many people in underdeveloped countries will go hungry while the food they could be eating is given to animals to be raised for slaughter. In a Huffington Post article, Eric Jimenez, the executive director of Food First Institute for Food and Development Policy, states that according to a study done by McGill University and the University of Minnesota, which was published in the Nature Journal, the world already produces more than 1.5 times enough food to feed everyone on the planet. That's enough food to feed 10 billion people, more than the population expected by 2050. Eric Jimenez explains that the actual cause of world hunger is poverty and inequality. Also, worldhunger.org states that poverty is the principal cause of hunger. As of 2008, the World Bank has estimated that there were an estimated 1,345 million poor people in developing countries who live on $1.25 a day or less. The problem is that many people in the world do not have the sufficient land to grow or income to purchase enough food. Eric Jimenez continues to state in his article that 400 experts commissioned for the 4-year International Assessment on Agriculture, Science, and Knowledge for Development also conclude that agroecology and local-based food economies were the best strategy to combat poverty and hunger. This explains that since we already produce enough food to feed more than the current population, the answer is not a vegan lifestyle to preserve grain for those in hunger rather than contributing to meat consumption, but to tackle the local issue of poverty itself. In conclusion, I believe the advocates' claim that Americans should gear towards a vegan lifestyle didn't have sufficient evidence for causation of veganism to improve health, failed to explain the caloric basis for greenhouse gas emissions in which a vegan diet emitted more harmful waste than non-vegan diets, and the advocate failed to address the cause of world hunger, which is not lack of food, but poverty.
All right, Tana, everything is really well organized and easy to follow. So you've got the main proposition, the secondary claims previewed, and then you go to each one individually in a very clear way. On the first point on the health issues, there's an immediate argument that says there's a lack of scientific evidence. Your claim that there's only one study that's applicable here, I'm not sure what the basis for knowing that that's the only study that is scientific in nature that applies to that. It is the study that you cite, and you have good criticism. I don't know if it's the study that the advocate cites or if it's the only study. I think we could use a little bit more explanation of that. But your criticism of the methodology of the research, suggesting that there may be other factors that are involved, I thought those are reasonable presses. It makes a lot of sense that there might be other things that account for those particular differences. And then I thought the follow-up arguments were also pretty effective when you suggest that heart disease, for instance, in particular arteriosclerosis, is not substantially different between vegans. In fact, they are likely to suffer more from that because of the low B12. I thought that was a good counterclaim on that particular point. And it would force, if you were having a debate, for instance, it would force them to devote a lot of time to answering that particular issue. And on the general health issues, I don't remember if other health things were mentioned, cancer rates or any of those kinds of things, but when you've got a particular like that and you use that as an example, then it becomes the focal point. People are going to remember that a little bit more. So I thought you made a good choice there. On the argument on the second point on the environment, there's an interesting idea here, and you explain it pretty well. The truth is that people have to consume more food if they were to get rid of the so-called bad foods, the meats and those kinds of things that we currently get our nutrition from, and that it's actually the increased consumption that would produce those kinds of harms. I like that explanation. There's some information that you present on this that's pretty effective. I like the research that you've got on that. That does a good job kind of suggesting that the benefit in the long run is not the way the advocate has presented it. And to me, by the way, whenever I hear those statistics that are being presented on that particular point, and I don't remember what the advocate's evidence was on that point, but there's often a kind of an exaggerated feel to how much water we devote or how much land or all of those sorts of things that are going on. And it would really be useful if somebody making those arguments or responding to those arguments looked into that and said that can't be accurate, or that's way too much, or if we were talking about as much land as the advocate is saying that we're using on this, there wouldn't be any land left. Like I said, I don't remember what the numbers were, if there were numbers, but I thought your response was a good counterclaim on that particular point. And then on the last one, that it's all counterclaim, and I thought you did a very good job explaining that the source of the problem is not a lack of grains. It's not that we're feeding all the corn and wheat to animals and therefore people don't get food. We produce plenty of corn and wheat for all of the animals, for all of the people. Problem is, people live in places where they can't afford that or they can't grow food for themselves because of poverty. And you have an excellent explanation on that. So I thought that that worked really well too. So I think you picked the right approach on these, kind of challenging the assumption on the first point and then arguing counterclaims and counter causality on the second and third point. All right, thank you.